Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Talos of Tech live on Twitch. Hopefully, Twitch is working today because the last stream, Twitch was real buggy. The chat seems to be working fine. I'm not exporting while I'm streaming this time, so hopefully it's a bit more stable. Welcome back, everyone, to the first regular, probably somewhat consistent Twitch stream of 2021, January 5th. Yeah, last time was pretty terrible, but it seems to be okay now. Hopefully, Twitch has upped their server budget, and they have a few more hamsters running on wheels that are powering the Twitch servers. So, anyways, iPhone 13 or 12S. I hate the 12S because people just think you're referring to the iPhone 12 in a plural form, although S makes more sense based on what we're hearing, because, I don't know, I think I want to try... I don't know how well I'm going to be able to stick to this plan, but I think I want to try to do less iPhone leak videos on YouTube. I don't mind talking about them on Twitch, but like that's been kind of the bread and butter of Talos of Tech since like the dawn of time. Since like I think the very first video I made on the tech channel that actually started picking up traction back in 2016, or was it 15, was talking about why the next iPhone won't have a headphone jack, and that's okay. And that was an iPhone leak, and that's where a lot of the first people who found Talos of Tech were coming from, was from that video initially. And that's just been, over the past few years, what most people want to talk about. They want to talk about the next iPhone, and I get why, you know, out of all of Apple's products, that's the one that sells the best. That's the one that's most applicable because we've got kids looking for new iPhones. We've got adults looking for new iPhones. It's a very, like, universally accepted model, a product that can apply to a lot of different types of people. So that's why there's lots of talk about with iPhones, and they're controversial because Apple changes things or removes things or doesn't incorporate things. So there's lots to talk about. But man, it's I remember the leaks coming forward for iPhone 11 or iPhone 10s or iPhone 12 even back in like January of last year. And so far, I got to admit, it's pretty dang slow. It does not sound super exciting from what we're hearing so far. Today's most recent reports are they're bringing LiDAR to every model, not just the Pros. Yay, LiDAR! Wonderful. And I rolled my eyes into the back of my head so many times. I think they spun twice as I was rolling them back when I read that Apple is trying to bring millimeter wave 5G to more countries with the next iPhone. So, okay. So, yeah, we've got millimeter wave in the US, but we've got not millimeter wave version of the iPhones in other countries outside of the US. So now they want to bring that to more countries. Great. Where they don't really have much millimeter wave 5G support in the first place. What else do we got rumored? 120 hertz on the Pro models. Yep. No surprise there. That's kind of going to feel overdue. That's the sad thing, is because I really appreciate and like 120 hertz, but we were all hoping it would be incorporated in 2020. And the fact that it wasn't means that 2021 is just going to feel like about time. It won't feel like a big new great addition of like, well, 120 hertz. It'll be like, well, this should have been here a while ago. Thank God we finally have it. But I know, because every time I bring it up, I get a million people that are like, guess what? I don't really care that much about it. We know it's not that uncommon of an opinion. The majority of people don't care or notice. I've tried many times. So I don't even think we're getting a smaller notch, personally. I think that if Apple wanted to shrink the notch, they would have done it in 2020, and they didn't. And I don't think the money it would take to rearrange the sensors or figure out how to do under-display cameras and that kind of thing, I don't think Apple's going to do it. So I'm predicting the notch is the same size. A15 chip, I don't really know what that's going to allow for. And there have been some leaks of Apple adopting a new Wi-Fi standard called Wi-Fi 6E. Because, yeah, I know that's a real common complaint. Yeah, my gigabit isn't fast enough on my iPhone. I need real fast Wi-Fi. Yeah, it sounds like the biggest S year probably since the 6S. A lot of people seem to still think that the iPhone 6S was a big year for the iPhone. I don't think so, especially in hindsight. Like 3D Touch in the moment felt like a big deal, but now knowing that Apple ended up removing it in the first place makes it even less exciting. Um, and the biggest change with the 6S was basically 4K video. That was it. Everything else was pretty much well established on the 6. The A9 chip was a bit of a bigger leap forward because the A8 chip was not very good. But maybe we're due for a iPhone upgrade even less eventful than the 6S, because we've already got 4K. We've already got 4K at 60. We've got night mode on all the lenses. Doesn't sound like they're going to be adding like telephoto lenses to the base iPhones. So yeah, I mean, there were reports of Apple bringing the larger camera sensors that are on the 12 Pro Max to the rest of the lineup. And having messed around with the 12 Pro Max camera, I don't think it makes a super noticeable difference. Maybe if you're doing pixel peeping and you're like zooming in really, really close, you might notice a little bit of detailed difference. But when you're posting that stuff on either Instagram or Twitter, it's not going to be noticed. 8K I don't think is going to be a big deal. I feel like 8K is approaching that law of diminishing returns, where it's going to take up a whole lot of space on your phone, and it's going to be very hard to tell the difference, because every resolution you go higher, the smaller the difference is, especially on the type of display you're looking at. On an iPhone, for sure, looking at the difference between a 4K video and an 8K video isn't going to matter, because it's barely much higher than 1080p, and it just takes up a bunch of space. I messed around with 8K on the Galaxy series, and I wasn't impressed with it. And you really only notice that type of resolution on large, large displays. So, yeah, I just I think this might be the most boring iPhone upgrade in a long, long time. I think that, yeah, I agree with Vlad. Milo Savek, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Macs are going to be the thing in 2021 for sure. There's lots of exciting developments in the Mac lineup, which is most likely what a lot of the tech videos on YouTube are going to be about this year. And also the iPad. I feel like we've got some interesting developments with the iPad lineup, especially when it comes to software. I feel like 2021 could be the year that the iPad replaces even more people's laptops if they get, external monitor support, and maybe Apple works on bringing some more pro class applications to it. It would be perfect to announce some kind of revamped software for the iPads at Quadruple UDC if the rumors are true that we're going to get a mini LED iPad Pro around March or April. If that's where the the new refreshed iPad Pro launches, with its either A14X or M1 chip, even, who knows. That would be really interesting to talk about in 2021. But I don't know about the headset, though. The headset has been rumored by Kuo for years now, so I'm skeptical to believe him. Ming-Chi Kuo was the one who dropped the latest report, for those in the chat referencing. There were reports that there's a new AR headset coming out this year. Yeah, that report came from Kuo, and Kuo also said that mass production of the AR glasses were starting in the fourth quarter of 2019. And that did not happen. That was not even close to being accurate. But he did say that was going to happen. And then even at the end of 2019, we had that CoinX tweet that said one more thing. So a lot of people thought maybe 2019 is the year of Apple glasses. Pretty much every keynote that was announced in 2020, I had a few people saying, maybe this is the event. Maybe this is the keynote Apple drops AR glasses. Maybe it's this one. Maybe it's this one. Maybe it's this one. And, I remember leakers saying we would get AR glasses in March of 2021, and now they don't seem to be saying that anymore. So I'm very skeptical with the AR glasses report, because it always feels like it's just a few quarters away. And it's been like that for several years now, which is why I guess I'm skeptical of it, is because it's so new and it's such uncharted territory, and it's such unestablished by competitors, which I know that's probably what a lot of people are excited about with the glasses, is the fact that no one else in the augmented reality game has really made anything like what we think Apple glasses are going to be. No one's really made anything that competitive, so we're thinking Apple might be like the first. Apple might be like one of the pioneering, like this is something they actually innovate with, and they're beating Samsung or they're beating Google, because Google Glass doesn't really count and no one really has it anymore. So it's like Apple's actually innovating here. But personally, it's more of like a supply chain thing. The way I see it is like Apple is not first to a lot of things because whatever Apple makes, they have to be able to sell in the tens of millions, right? So Apple's not able to. Apple probably, for one, they're not a very vertically integrated company when it comes to mass production, unlike Samsung. You know, Samsung owns a lot of their own factories and they build chips and displays for all types of other companies. Um, but that allows them to build certain devices and incorporate certain technologies into very small unit shipments, like the Galaxy Fold or the Z Flip. You know, those don't sell in huge quantities like the iPhone does. So Samsung, because they're vertically integrated mass production wise, is capable of incorporating that kind of latest generation tech. That's why they've had OLED so much longer than Apple has. Um, and I feel somewhat the same way about augmented reality glasses. If Apple was planning on ramping up production, or a headset, I don't care what they call it, even if the headset comes first, you're going to see other companies doing it probably a lot more affordably. Companies like Google and Samsung, and maybe I don't know, a few other companies that are smaller that can scale production on a smaller number compared to Apple. Because, you know, if Apple released glasses, you know that millions and millions of people are going to want to buy them. And that makes it a very, very hard secret to keep in the mass production world when Apple has to outsource all of their productions. So that's why I feel like if we're not really hearing about it being mass produced, or they haven't really selected supply chains yet, I have doubts that it's soon. Because, you know, it wasn't that long ago we had people saying, actually, it's 2023. Actually, it's 2022. Actually, it's 2024. And it feels like with with technology like this, it's going to be very unproven, very uncertain. And leakers have been very unreliable with the glasses report. That's putting it lightly. Let's see. We need a new iPod line. No, come on. Just get an old iPhone. Just have an unlocked older iPhone. That's your new iPod. Let's see. If Apple's got so into the sound market, what if they get into the camera market too? Maybe similar to how they bought Beats, they could buy a camera company and then work off of their success. I would love that, Yusuf. I don't think it's going to happen because most likely Apple wants all of their best cameras, and they just want iPhones to get better. They want to get iPhones to the point where you don't even need dedicated cameras. I know it's not realistic because iPhones have to do all kinds of computational tricks to look good, and they have to do all types of compression, and you're never really going to get the same amount of quality out of a dedicated camera with an iPhone. You can replicate it best you can with portrait mode and computational trickery with the software. You can get close, but it's never going to be exactly as good as like a fully fledged camera sensor with interchangeable lenses and that kind of thing. I agree. It would be amazing. I want Apple to buy Blackmagic. I think that would be awesome because Blackmagic designs all this custom software. They build these pretty affordable cameras. If you compare them to a company like Red, Blackmagic is a lot cheaper and can provide a lot of the same benefits. They have very user-friendly UI. It's very easy to understand, even as someone like me who didn't take, I don't have like a degree in film or anything, but I can understand, and the touch screens are very interactive and responsive. So I think Blackmagic is awesome. And whenever you go to Blackmagic's website, like, they're always demonstrating using their hardware with Apple. Like, they're always showing, here's how you use our cameras with a Mac, and here's how the software is optimized for the Mac, and we're optimizing for the M1 chip and all that stuff. So I feel like they would work pretty well together. I think they're based out of Australia, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't see it happening because Apple's vision is just the iPhone camera is the best camera and that nothing can touch it. But for a lot of people, it's true. The majority of consumers are fine with a smartphone camera, and there's only a fairly high, production quality number of people that actually need dedicated cameras now. Like, the number of people with designated cameras has dropped significantly in the past few decades just because of smartphone cameras getting so good. But yeah, it's hard to say. Let's see. It'd be a thick watch. Do you think any phone company will make a phone that folds into a watch? Some might try, but I don't think it'll go very well. That's my that's my prediction. I think, yeah, there will be at least one company that try. I think there was. I think it was at CES or something. I remember a few years ago someone made some flexible display smartphone that you could slap onto your wrist and then pull off when you need to, but it was bad and the specs were bad and it was probably $5,000. Not something that would work well for the masses, but looked cool in a what's it called? Looked cool in a concept show. The concept electronics show. That's what I call it. Yeah. Oh well. You think 2021 Apple's going to start their AR rollout? Yeah. It'd be cool if you're right. We've been having we've been saying that for the past few years now. I remember there being Apple glasses leaks in 2018 and 2017 for people saying they'd be out by 2019 and at the very latest 2020, and here we are, and we're like, this is the year. So yeah, how many times are we going to say it? I don't know, but my guess is Apple doesn't see a rush. That's the other thing. I'm sure Apple's working on it. I think Tim Cook in an interview once even said straight up, like, the hardware isn't ready yet for augmented reality, which in my mind was like proof that Apple's working on the glasses. They want to get it right. It's a very difficult product to get right, in my opinion. In fact, of all wearables Apple's made, the glasses are probably the most tricky part. I don't even know if I believe that Apple's working on an AR headset for release. Internally, sure, yeah. Do they have something that looks like the Microsoft HoloLens that their developers are messing around with so that they can prototype how to design the glasses and stuff like that? Sure. I bet there's internally all kinds of prototypes like that. But I don't understand or see much appeal for Apple releasing like a giant helmet-looking headset that you can just use some AR apps with. I could be wrong, but to me that just doesn't seem like Apple. That seems like a developer tool that only people in the AR field would enjoy using. If Apple wants to release something, they want it to be like approachable and scalable for like everybody. If they want to release AR glasses, they want it to be kind of like the Apple Watch or the iPod or the iPhone. Sure, it's going to be expensive, but user friendliness and how simple it is to set up and use. And also fashionable, because Apple cares about the way things look, and they, to a certain extent, sometimes they do the AirPods Max battery case, but that's not something you wear. Like, Apple hired a bunch of like fashion employees once they started doing the Apple Watch because they knew that they wanted like something you wear that's always on you is something very personal, and you have to get the looks of that right, and you have to get the aesthetics down. And AirPods are kind of subjective. When they first came out, everyone said they look stupid, and now it's become just kind of a universally acceptable look. Lots of people have them. And with the glasses, it might be something similar because, it's difficult to get that type of technology into a slim, fashionable looking pair of glasses, because anytime a company currently makes AR stuff, they make it all bulky and huge because it's got to hold all these computer parts and batteries in it. And I feel like Apple, when it comes to AR glasses, has probably the best chance at making something reasonable, because I think they even read an article about it this morning. Like, Apple has some of the best silicon in the game, especially when it comes to power efficiency, like on the Apple Watch or on the AirPods. They can make these chips that run on very, very low power. And that's extremely important when you're developing glasses, because you don't have a lot of weight for big batteries. So whatever batteries they're planning on putting in the glasses, they have to be very small, very light, which means battery life is a huge issue. And the other big challenge with glasses is rendering, like 3D models in front of people's eyes. Typically, you have to have a fairly high resolution display if you're going to be putting them, less than an inch away from someone's face. So it's a very difficult thing to get right, but Apple Silicon is probably going to be better at it than everybody else. And also, an article I read this morning was talking about how the iPhone is going to be doing most of the processing and rendering for all of the holograms and all the images you're looking at, and the glasses themselves are just kind of like an external display in a way. They're not rendering all the images, they're just displaying them. But even just the tech of displaying a 3D image that you're tracking into real time, even just displaying that stuff is a big battery drain and requires a certain amount of graphics performance that fitting into something that thin and light is tricky. So because no one else in the tech world has really developed much like it, no one else, like Samsung and Google, they've done prototypey stuff with AR, but nothing very average consumer friendly. So that's probably why Apple doesn't see a big rush. They're like, we're not missing out on a market. It's not like there's someone else who's dominating the augmented reality glasses field and we're just being late to the game. They're just like, well, no one else is doing it, so we might as well take our time and make sure we get it right, and also find a way to, produce them in a way that they can be scaled and not super duper unaffordable. I still think they're going to be more expensive than people expect, but um, somewhat obtainable, like you can't charge $10,000 for them, but this is Apple. Who knows? Maybe they'll find that worth it. Testing tech that's 5 to 10 years out, your personal tech life would seem so boring. Yeah, if you were an Apple tester internally, that would make everyday tech not as interesting. I agree. Let's see. I'm not sure what you mean by Macs have been underwhelming. Check out the M1 and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Are you responding to someone else? Because I didn't say they were underwhelming. Let's see. What hertz would you want to see on Apple Glass? At first, I wouldn't be shocked if they're 60 or 30 hertz, because when that tech first starts out, it's, refresh rate is just a huge battery drain, and that's going to be one of the biggest issues with Apple Glass. So I could understand why they wouldn't want to do 90 or 120. As much as that would look more realistic and natural, you have to figure out for yourself, is that worth having a 2-hour battery life if it looks more realistic? It's a difficult discussion to have there. Maybe it would be an option, but my guess is that it would be pretty low on the first generation at least. Let's see. Do I use any widgets on my home screen? Not my default one. I have this is what I open every time I unlock my phone, and then I have a couple widgets on the secondary screen, but that's about it. Honestly, I think most of the widgets are too big. Like I think Apple needs a lot smaller ones. Let's see. Testing tech that's 5 to 10 years out, correct. Maybe Apple is waiting on micro LED for the AR glasses. I don't think that's what they're waiting for. Micro LED is, at least how I understand it, not transparent displays, which is what you would need for glasses. Let's see. There was a phone at CES that could be wrapped around your wrist. It was Lenovo? Is that who it was? Imagine if 120 hertz was on the 12, the 2021 model would be more of a snooze fest. Yeah, I didn't expect it to be on the 12. I just wanted it to be on the Pro series because I felt like now that you have OLED and the Super Retina XDRs on the entry-level iPhones, the Pros should have a little bit more than stainless steel to justify the higher price. That's all. That's the only reason I wanted 120 hertz on the Pros. I feel like that would have justified the Pro tax, as they call it. Yeah, the iPhones are sounding like quite the snooze fest for 2021, and I'm hoping that means the leak game can be just kind of died down a bit, because 2020 felt like an absolute train wreck of leaks of people saying, "Oh, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. No, actually, this is what's going to happen," and just so much misinformation was sent out that people got excited for. But wait, so I can't tape micro LEDs to my face pretending they're Apple Glass? I don't think so, Mike. You could try, though. I'd like to see what that looks like. Am I wrong that none of the Macs have an OLED screen? Technically speaking, yes, because the touch bar is OLED. I know that's not what you mean, but every Mac with a touch bar has an OLED display. It's not the only display, but they also have an LCD display. But technically, yes, the touch bar is OLED. If the iPhone Pros get 120 hertz, if the feature eventually comes to the normal line, would it eventually be on the Apple Watch to combine with the rest of the lineup, assuming they have the tech for 120 hertz on something that small? They could add it. I don't think motion would be that noticeable or that appreciated on the Apple Watch, but yeah, I mean, in time they could eventually do that. I know you didn't mean that, but I'm just saying technically, if we're wanting to get technical here, every touch bar is an OLED display. So, in a way, Vlad says, "What accessory would you like Apple to make next?" I would personally like to see a lot more MagSafe accessories. I kind of feel like they're underutilizing it right now, because I love MagSafe Duo, and I have the little MagSafe charge puck on my desk right here. But I would like a vertical stand, something that kind of looks like the iMac stand, but with just MagSafe on the top, kind of like a mini Pro stand, and you can just drop your phone on it. That way you could use it in landscape if you want to, and that kind of thing. Or what other accessories? A good pair of over-ear headphones. Not AirPods Max. I would like them to make a decent case for AirPods Max. What other accessories? I've still wanted smart bands since the beginning of time. Just like uh, watch bands that could add battery life or add health sensors or that kind of thing. If you care so much about ECG, wouldn't it be nice if you could just add the blood oxygen sensor or add ECG via a watch band, that kind of thing? There's a few other accessories. I mean, I would love them to get into the camera business. I don't know if that counts as an accessory, but either way, if Apple made their own cameras, all I really care about is being able to share those files with my computer wirelessly. Because if Apple would just open up AirDrop to third parties the same way they've opened up AirPlay and HomeKit to third parties, that would make sharing footage with my computer so much easier. Because they removed the SD card slot on the MacBooks, right? But they didn't really have a great alternative other than an adapter. I kind of needed that AirPods equivalent of, we removed the headphone jack, but there's a wireless option now. It's like, okay, we removed the SD card slot, but here's a wireless option that they could just outsource. And you could make it really complicated. I get for security reasons, Apple's a little hesitant to make AirDrop available on third-party hardware because they're like, oh, we don't want people getting third-party stuff showing up on their phone, and we want it to be locked down and secure. So you can make it like really technically hard to get approved. Like you have to submit an application. One brand has to submit this giant application and how it works and how it is verified and secure and all that. So they can just be like, okay, Canon or Nikon has been approved to support AirDrop, or they don't have to just open it up to anybody who buys this one chip now has AirDrop. But something that would make it easier to share files like that. Let's see. Am I the only person who thinks Apple doesn't need to get into the car market? No, not at all. As many times as people in the chat on Twitch say, unpopular opinion, or am I the only one? Most of the time, no, you're not. I'd say 99% of the time someone says, am I the only, or unpopular opinion, they're usually saying something a lot of people agree with. There's plenty of people that agree Apple does not need to get into the car market, and I think Apple probably thinks the same way. I think Apple's a little late on the car market to the point that I wouldn't even recommend it at this point. I think unless Apple is willing to just completely go all in on vertical integration on production, which is honestly I think might be a better investment. I debated even making a video on that. I might actually, seeing how people react to it here, maybe I will. I think Apple, with all of their capital and all of their resources, should start working on their own factories. Maybe start moving away from Foxconn or all of the third-party suppliers they outsource iPhone production with. They have a lot of money. It's not like Samsung has more money, and that's how Samsung is able to produce all their stuff in-house. Apple's very vertically integrated on their designs. They want to design the chip, and they want to design the Mac, and they want to design the iPhone and design the software, but the mass production is all outsourced to other companies. And outside of the car discussion, I think it would be neat, especially as Apple's putting forward this goal. They want to be carbon neutral by 2030, and they want to have complete control over their supply chains and their emissions. In my opinion, they should invest in building their own facilities. I know it would cost a lot. I know it would be very, very expensive, and I know that Foxconn is probably cheaper, but just think of all the backlash Apple has gotten for using certain supply chains, whether it be forced labor or child labor, or there's all kinds of scandals they've been caught on with like this, they use this supplier and this supplier broke these labor laws. That's not good, and we all hate that. And sadly, Apple's not the only one, but a lot of people make it out that way. Like Samsung has the most ethical end-to-end production process, but it would definitely help if Apple built all that stuff themselves. They're designing their own silicon. I'd like to see them design their own factories and assembly lines and that kind of stuff. Um, that way they can ensure ethical business practices, and in the long run, it might save them money if they're designing them from the ground up, and they can build them more efficiently, and they can make sure that all the factories are powered by renewable energy and not being um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that investment would be worth it. Yeah, Apple has outsourced production companies so they can use slave labor without having to deal with any of the consequences. No, they deal with consequences. No, they they don't have to directly get punished, but I mean, there's media outlets and uh, news gets out about that all the time. Like here we are still talking about it, but I think it would be a worthy investment of their money if they're wondering what their next big investment should be. I doubt Apple would ever make a traditional mouse if you don't like the Magic Mouse. Yeah. I'm still a big fan of the Magic Mouse, but I understand why a lot of people don't like it. I know many people don't like the MagSafe wallet, but I like it. However, why does it not come in red to match the red leather cases? I know a lot of people that enjoy the MagSafe wallet. I don't like it personally. It seems like everybody who bought one seems to really like it, and all the people who didn't buy one seem to hate it. It's kind of interesting like that. Um, I don't think Marquez bought one. I think he was sent one, but yeah, he like Nick from the podcast got one, and he seems to really like it. And I watched who was it? Peter McKinnon, I think, did a video on it saying that everyone was wrong about it. And there seems to be lots and lots of people who got the wallet and enjoyed it, but I just need more than 3 cards. I'm sorry. I don't want to get by with 3 cards in my wallet. And also $60 for something like that is just too much. Especially when Ridge sent me a wallet for free. That was nice of them. They didn't have to do that. They were just like, here you go. I was like, this is cool. I like having a dedicated wallet like that. I don't need it to snap on the back. And the idea of having to unhinge the wallet to charge it all the time. I don't know. I just not my thing, but it's an interesting idea. It's a cool concept to be able to slap accessories on the back. I would more rather have like a battery bank would be more applicable and interesting to me than a wallet, but it's got potential. Hopefully they can make it a little stronger. Let's see. MagSafe wallet is the most useful product compared to the leather sleeve. The leather sleeve, I don't understand the point of it all. That's just dumb. Um, let's see. Do you think they would ever have domestic manufacturing? Well, they do. I mean, they build the Mac Pro in the United States, so they have a little bit of domestic. They have a little bit of domestic manufacturing, but not on anything they mass produce. Like how many people buy a Mac Pro a year? Probably like 3, especially since Apple has designed and announced Apple Silicon. Now that they're making their own processors, who's buying the Mac Pro anymore, right? They built that whole facility, they built that whole factory, and it's probably going to become useless in like 2 days once the Apple Silicon iMac and more Apple Silicon products start coming out. No one's going to want to buy the Intel Mac Pro anymore. Um, Maybe they build the Apple Silicon Mac Pro in the United States. I'm not sure. But it seems like Apple doesn't mind building that kind of stuff in the US if it's a low volume product. It would be fairly difficult to do with a high volume product. Maybe if they figured out how to make it more autonomous and require less manual labor to build iPhones and stuff. Right now, there's still quite a lot of people. Um, the U.S. is expensive too. Like to have a factory employee in the United States is very, very expensive compared to China. It costs a lot more in China, and a lot of the living conditions and pay for workers and stuff in China is terrible. But I think a lot of the time, if you watch documentaries about Foxconn and you watch documentaries about all labor in China, it's kind of just a nationwide issue. It's not just like a Apple invented Foxconn or anything. Like there's a lot of companies like Foxconn in China, and the thing is, everyone, the working class is so difficult to get by in China for multitudes of reasons that Foxconn application day, people are like running to the door. It's not like people are working at Foxconn because they were plucked out of a happy job somewhere else, and that you're gonna work for Foxconn. It's like compared to wherever else you can work in China, a lot of people want to work there because, yeah, the pay and the workforce and the working situations there are not great. But that's more of a countrywide problem, not just a Foxconn problem. Um, let's see. Don't you think in the long run people will much more readily buy products from Apple if they knew it was made in the U.S. completely ethically? I hate to say this, but no. I think that if they were made in the US, they would probably cost a lot more, and that's what most people care about. It's a sad truth, and sure, it might sway some people to know that their iPhone was built in the US or it was built ethically, but currently iPhones have had tremendously good sales and they haven't been ever made in the US. So I don't think there's an argument or a good case for that. If they were built in the U.S., more people would buy iPhone. I really don't think that's how it works. Because like no phones are built in the U.S. Like all phones are built out outside the United States because mass producing stuff here is so expensive. That's why I don't think anybody cares where and who makes Apple products. Yeah, I think I have to agree with Yusuf. There's been all kinds of Apple getting caught with scandals of child labor or forced labor or that kind of thing happening with their supply chains. I don't think Apple likes that. I think Apple wants to prevent that, but they also have to figure out, who can build this iPhone in the most cost effective way. And they're going to go with whoever can do it. And, their supply chains to get caught, and they can't just instantly shut down the whole facility. It sucks, but most companies don't work that way. I mean, like they can't just figure out that one of their suppliers was using unethical labor practices and then just say, okay, no new iPhones are going to be built until we find the right supplier. It's like, no, that would that would run into huge bottleneck problems with production and that kind of thing. So they can't just halt everything, and no company does really. Anyone as big as Apple doesn't do that, but there's probably a lot more engineering that could go on to find ways of building the iPhone without people. That's likely what Apple would do if they found a way to mass produce phones and iPads and all the electronics Apple makes. If they found ways of mass producing them that would require nobody, then they would more likely want to do domestic production and build up factories that are basically like Elon Musk talked about, the alien juggernaut of just this giant machines and robots putting together phones with no people, and there's basically just like a security team and a janitorial staff that makes sure everything is clean and makes sure that the metals are going into the right places, and then robots build out everything else. That's something I could see them wanting to move away from, China and mass producing things overseas. But yeah, it's a sad truth, but Dinkata here in the chat is probably correct that almost every company uses. So if you go back through enough supply chains, there's probably going to be some evidence of child labor or slavery because of how much we use that's built in China. I mean, if you tried to never buy anything that had some type of, and it's so much there's so much complications in it because there's so many things we buy that are using parts that were built in China. So even if you say like, well, this says it was built in Taiwan, but the framing and a lot of the parts that went into that machine came from China, it all stems back. It's a global issue, and I'm not in favor of it. It's just impossible to dodge. If you were trying to make the argument that I'm going to not buy anything that may have some type of direct tie, you couldn't buy anything. If you're watching this right now, you're most likely using something that was built in China, or at least has parts that were built in China and exported from there. And most likely some of those suppliers were exploiting labor laws and doing things that aren't okay. It's sad, but it's true. It's most likely the case. Dreadnought, sorry, I probably mispronounced that. My gripe with it is that Apple sometimes ignores the flaws they see in terms of child labor and slavery because they're afraid that the iPhone launches would get delayed. Flaws that they see in their supply chains. I don't know if they ignore. It's just that they can't find. I don't know what Apple's thinking. You guys know I don't work with Apple, but my best guess is that obviously any reasonable human being would hear about that type of thing, whether it be child labor or slavery, and say that's not good. We should try not to do that. But there's also situations with big companies like Apple where you have so many moving parts. You have so many facilities and Apple stores and shipment warehouses and carriers saying we need more product, we need more inventory, and it's not a super viable option to just say, okay, stop using this supplier that's been caught and just do nothing if we don't have another supplier in place, because it's not something you can just switch on and off. It's not like, oh, Foxconn was caught, stop using Foxconn, switch over to some other supplier, because they don't have the resources, they don't have the parts in place, and they don't have the assembly line. So it's not it's not something you can just easily switch off and turn on somewhere else. I think mass production and scaling production is a lot more complicated than people realize. So when there's that many moving parts, you can't really necessarily just shut everything down and switch over. Dreadnought and Juggernaut equals Druggernaut. There you go. Perfect. But yeah, it's a sad situation. I don't enjoy it, and I have to imagine no one at Apple enjoys hearing about that type of thing. I don't think I would be very shocked to hear someone at Apple hear about that type of thing and just be like, whatever. Tough luck. I imagine they're like, ooh, that's not good. Can we contact that supplier and try to make sure they don't do that again? Like, I think that would be more likely the response. Like, because you can't switch everything over, like the more recent report I saw them, like that there was some scandal saying that Apple didn't switch away from a corrupted supplier for like 3 years, and they were mass producing something. But I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of the situation, but if they're mass producing something that no one else can mass produce, how do you just abandon them immediately as soon as they're caught? It's like, oh, that's not okay. Turn it off. Okay, no new Apple TVs. We're not going to build Apple TVs anymore until we completely redesign the assembly line and contact a more proper supplier. Like, I don't think that's business-wise very viable if they just shut off and they just said, oh, it's not going to look good for the company either if they say, actually, we're going to stop producing Apple TVs now because the assembly line was caught exploiting certain labor laws, and we're not going to have any new Apple TVs for a few months because of that. It's like, I mean, ethically speaking, you could probably argue that's a good choice, but financially speaking, it's probably not a great one. And yeah, that's the debate, right? That's the tricky part, which is the right call. It's easy as an individual, as one person who's not really in charge, to be like, yeah, do the ethical thing, don't do the financial thing. But when you're a business and you're employing people and you have all these moving parts and you've got orders to fill, and it's tricky. It's a tough one. Manny J. Tejeda says, I live in the Caribbean and I work for a big outsourced company that provides customer and technical services for a lot of major brands like Samsung and AT&T. The only reason is for them to save money because it is way too expensive to hire the same service in North America. Yeah, that's true. That's what happens when it's a good and bad thing. In America, they have certain standards of, like, if you're going to hire employees that work this long, you have to provide them XYZ. And that's good for those employees. My wife is one of them. She works at a business and because she works a certain number of hours each week, is provided, coverage and healthcare and a certain base pay and pay on top of that and annual raises. And that kind of stuff is way, way cheaper to do overseas. So that means you get less job opportunities in the United States for big scaling production and that kind of thing. It's easy for us to just say, no, Apple should do all that and just pay everyone more. But what's more likely is, because they secure certain profit margins, if you wanted to build the iPhone in the United States, it would likely start at $2,500, and then no one would buy it. So it's not a it's not a very financially supportive concept. Let's see. I've had enough, Drew. After the hundreds of Taylosive streams I've watched, I've decided to suspend you from YouTube and Twitter in order you to apply for a job as a business and or financial management teacher. Yeah, I would be great at that. I have worked at home for over a year now, so I am qualified to teach as a financial management teacher. I just like looking at things less black and white, keeping in mind it's not as simple as people think, don't do that, when you hear something bad happening. Just stop it. It's not always that easy. What did you study at college, if you ever even went? I went to college for 1 year. There's community college. It was nothing very fancy. I was basically, it was my senior year of high school, technically. I was in a program called College Connections, which meant in high school I did freshman, sophomore, junior year, and then my senior year I went to a community college to finish out my high school credits and start college units at the same time. And I hated it so much that I decided I didn't want to keep going to college, because I took business class, I took mass media and society, I took film class, I took web design, and I learned absolutely nothing from all of them. I also had to take some required courses, like I had to take statistics, and I had to take an English course, and I had to take, there must have been another one. What was it? I don't know. I took a bunch of classes that sounded interesting to me, and I hated all of them. There was not a single bit of useful information I got from any of those classes. Um, None of it was applicable or practical, and everything that I'm doing for my job right now, I learned from experience. None of it I learned from college. College taught me nothing. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to pay these companies to have these giant facilities where we go to these big rooms and then they put on YouTube videos, or they go through PowerPoints and they tell me to take these tests so that hopefully 4 years from now they can hand me a piece of paper that says, there, you're qualified. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to pay for this, and I don't think it's going to be worth it, because I was doing YouTube while I was in College Connections and it was starting to pick up some traction, and I was like, I would much rather just pursue this. And that wouldn't work for everybody. I do think college is important for certain careers and certain jobs. You do need to go to college, and I just wasn't pursuing a job that needed that. Whether you're going to be a teacher or an engineer or a doctor, those types of things you need college courses for, and you probably learn a lot from them. But for what I was wanting to pursue, which was basically just running my own business and running my own YouTube network and wanting to become a content creator, they didn't have courses that could help me there. The film class was completely useless. The business class was also completely useless. It was all just read this textbook, here's this vocabulary, but none of it was useful. It's not like I think college is pointless for everyone. I just think there's a lot of people that go to college who don't need to. I know a lot of those people that were like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to go to college, rack up a bunch of student debt, and not really know what I want to do outside of college. There's lots and lots of friends I had from high school that basically did that and just went to college hoping that something would inspire them. And I would just say, like, if you don't know what you're going to do, don't invest, a bunch of money into it. And that's the annoying thing for me, was in college, they were basically constantly telling me and all of my peers that if you don't go to a college and if you don't go to a university, you're going to basically end up being poor and homeless. Like, there was so many courses and so many lectures we had to sit through where they were just like, you have to go to college, you have to go, like, and if you don't go, you're going to be poor, and if you don't go to this college, you're going to run it. And there's so many positions I know of people that did not go to college that have really good paying jobs now, between trade schools or schools that taught people how to do practical things, whether it be like welding or, man, I have so many friends of friends. I know so many welders outside of high school and college. There were like welding teams. They didn't really go to college, but they took welding courses and they went to trade schools that taught them how to weld, and now they make really, really good money, and they didn't have to get into massive debt over it. Whereas I know these other people that got these degrees that are basically useless, because they were constantly told at every step of the way that, oh, if you get this degree, you'll have a certain job waiting for you at the end. And then they take all the courses and they rack up all this debt, and then they get out of college and there's no job that really fits what they thought they were going to get a job for. They were just told by professors and counselors that, oh yeah, no, if you get this degree, that'll grant you access to certain jobs. And they get out and they're like, wait, I don't know how to work. They don't know how to apply for a job. They basically just took tests and wrote essays and read books for years and years, but they never learned how to work for themselves. Like, that's a really common problem, at least in my personal life. I know a lot of people that ended up like that. And So that's why my advice for students or aspiring college students is basically just don't do college unless you know what it's for. If you know what you're working towards and you know there's going to be a position on the other end, you got to look at it as an investment. It's an investment in time and also a huge investment in money for certain colleges people go to. Like, if you're going to invest 40 grand a year, are you going to get that money back when you're done? Because a lot of people don't really do. There's a lot of degrees out there that people get and they don't really find a job afterwards that pays that off. And they're spending 10, 20 years trying to pay off student debt for a degree that they don't even really utilize. Especially today in a very changing world, there's a lot of stuff that you can't really get out of degrees. And there's a lot of places that are hiring people with or without a degree. They don't really care. Um, yeah, there's a lot of people that went to college just to, what's them demo saying? I had a bunch of rich friends who just went to college to party away from parents. That's a lot of it. I knew a few people like that too. They just wanted time away from their parents and they wanted, the college life. They wanted to meet people. They just wanted to hook up with those connections, find people with similar interests and the social aspect, That's kind of what my oldest sister did. She got what we call the MRS degree because she met her husband there, and she's very happy. She's doing well, and he's a nice guy. He's my brother-in-law now, but does she utilize the degree she got out of college very often? Not really. I mean, she learned some stuff there, but for the most part, she's doing some freelance video editing, but she kind of taught herself all that. She didn't really get most of that from her degree. Let's see. Dcar says, I got lucky. I have 2 degrees and no debt. I just graduated in the middle of the pandemic. Good for you. No debt's the way to take it. Let's see. I dropped out of high school because I felt like I was wasting my time and went out to homeschool myself. Oh, interesting. That's one way to do it. Hope it works out. Let's see. It's not pointless. It depends on what you're aiming to do. Yeah, I would say if you were aiming to do something like what I'm doing, where you're just like running a YouTube network or establishing a social media brand and managing this, I would not recommend you go to college for this. If your goal is just to become a full-time YouTuber, is start making videos and work a minimum wage job to help pay for tools like cameras and microphones and computers and that kind of stuff. At least that's what I did. I can't guarantee how long you'll be working. The minimum wage job is kind of the stepping stone. You're not going to be working at McDonald's or Taco Bell just because that's fun, but you're just using it to kind of get by in the meantime, and then hopefully the YouTube thing takes off and grows in time. For me, it was like a year. I worked at a mandarin ranch for a year, did YouTube on the side, and then YouTube had grown enough to the point where it could cover my monthly expenses, and then it's grown since then. For other people, it could be 5 years or 10 years. I don't know. It's not always going to be a linear, exact same template for everyone. But if your goal is to become a school teacher, then yeah, I would be like, okay, here's the courses you got to take, and here's the degrees you got to get. Or if you want to be a doctor, that's a much more specific path. So yeah, it just depends. I would just say don't rack up a bunch of student debt if you're not exactly sure what you want to do. Try to figure out what you want to do before everything, because that matters most. I know several people who thought they wanted to be filmmakers or movie producers, so they went to a film school and spent tens of thousands of dollars on tuition and fees and all that, and then by the time they had gotten their degree and they were 4 years through, they didn't want to do film anymore. So they didn't do it themselves. They just thought that's what they wanted to do. So I would say just like interning or applying for jobs and figuring out what you're passionate about or what you enjoy doing, that's what should matter most. Figuring out what you want to make a career out of. And don't let it just be an idea. There's a lot of people I knew that are just like, oh, I like video games, so I'm going to be a video game designer. But then they don't ever do anything. They don't do much coding. They just play video games and think, well, I'll be a video game designer, so I got to take a coding class and do this. And then they find out that, yeah, all of the work and all of the software engineering that goes into designing a video game isn't very fun. It's not that enjoyable. They just enjoyed the product. They didn't enjoy the process. And they became so obsessed with the product that they didn't realize the process was going to be miserable. So they spent all this money and Yeah, it's not. It's an expensive thing, and I feel like people just kind of take that as acceptable. Just assume, oh yeah, college is expensive, and you go there to figure out what you want to do, and there's people just rack up all the debt, and they're just like, oh, I don't know, I was told to go to college, so I went to college. It's figure out what you want to do. What if my dream job is a Wii Sports esport champion? Then play a lot of it and probably stream it. Figure out if you're actually going to enjoy that. Others. I want to become an engineer. Drew. My goal is to be a famous Apple sheep. Yeah, I can't say that's how it initially began, but I think control is what mattered to me most. Because I had a lot of friends that went to film school, and I was thinking of going to film school for a long time, but then I started realizing that all my friends who went to film school didn't want to make movies anymore. Everyone who went to film school was like, nah, I don't think I want to actually work in the industry. Um, so I was like, well, why are all these people going to film school and then not wanting to do film anymore? So I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to make videos myself and put them on the internet, and hopefully people watch them. And even if it's something that, like my initial goal wasn't like, let's do tech videos. It was just like, I want to make videos, whether they're skits or whether they're vlogs or gaming videos or movie review. I just want to make my own stuff. I don't want someone else telling me what I have to make or what I have to do. Um, like that's what a lot of the film industry was. All these friends of mine going into film school, and then they have to work on someone else's project. They just become the lighting guy, or they just become the editor, or they don't really have control over what they're making. They have to follow someone else's rule. They have to follow someone else's advice and help someone else achieve their vision. And I didn't have much interest in helping other people achieve their vision. I just had my own projects I wanted to make myself. And even if I didn't have as many resources or as much money or as much job opportunities, I just wanted to make sure above all else I had control over what I was making, which is part of the reason I still don't do sponsorships, is because I don't like companies telling me, you got to make a video and it has to look this way and you have to say these things. I don't want to give up that type of control. I just want to be able to say, this is my video. If I want to make a video about a certain brand, I can. If I want to say bad things, I can. If I want to say good things, I can. And just having that complete control is what mattered to me the most. So finding out what is the biggest priority for you should likely influence whether or not college is the right call. Is like, does this help you achieve that top priority? And for me, college was not going to help me achieve that control priority, whereas YouTube did. I can make the videos I want to make, and I can stream when I want to, and I don't have a boss. I don't have a manager telling me how to do it. I can buy the stuff I want to buy. That's what's been achieved here, I suppose. What did Mike say? Video games got me into science, which got me into robotics, which got me into mechanical engineering. It's all about time and figuring out what you want to do. Yes, that's very important in my opinion. Just figuring out exactly what you want to be. Don't just mindlessly take courses and not really have much direction with it. I don't know. Hopefully something opens up, because that's a lot of people. Yusuf says, I feel like you're supposed to go to college or university because you already know what you want to do. You're supposed to decide your future in high school. Yeah, I mean, the sooner the better, because then you can start figuring out what courses you should be taking. Um, but yeah, I would generally agree. It's hard because people don't know what they want to do, or they don't know what they want their career to be. But that's why I'd recommend interning or job shadowing, or just getting really close to those who are doing things you want to do, so you can figure out what the daily work life of that looks like. Because a college course or a high school can't really teach you what it's going to be like to be working in a certain profession. You have to do that stuff yourself to figure out, am I going to enjoy this, or is this something I don't really care that much about? Yeah, if you're asking a 17 or 18-year-old what you want to do for the rest of your life, they're probably not going to have a great idea because they don't have much life experience. But telling them to give up $200,000 to figure out what they want to do, and having this huge amount of debt right out of high school is just a terrible way to start. It's a terrible way to start your life and figure out what you want to pursue if you've got that giant amount of debt hanging over you. So Yeah, not a great plan in my opinion. Um, any plans to get Randy and Nick on the tech channel as a co-host? I know they have their own channels as they're managing, but it would be fun to see them in the newsroom. Yeah, I don't know. Haven't thought much about it. Um, they do definitely have their own channels. Um, but yeah, I don't know how the audience would react honestly, because there's a lot of people who watch the podcast, but there's also a lot of people who don't and just watch the tech videos. And if you had any kind of inconsistency like that, where you just had someone else hosting tech vids, it would probably throw a bunch of people off. Um, Not really sure. Not sure if I want to try that or see how people would react. It would probably get up messy financially, but you know we do collabs, which is good enough for me. We had Nick on as a guest for the Apple Card Plus video, and then we had Randy on for the iPhone unboxing. So just occasional collabs is more practical for me. Anyway, I'm gonna get going. I've got some more videos to work on, but I appreciate the Twitch Prime from Silverboy31 and the bits from Lucas Lowe, I525, the glorious one, rated with a party of one. How lovely! What a party! But thank you all for watching, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care, all. Have a good one.